Okay, so here we are. We're on slide number 6. And slide number 6 is a beautiful cross-section of skin. And the reason I show this is we're going to start talking about the details, the little minutia of the skin. And you need to know what we're talking about before we get there, right? So take a look at this picture. In this picture, you see like a brown layer, and then you see a purpley layer right at the top. And both of those are part of what we call the epidermis. And then we have this big section below that is labeled the dermis, but in reality, the dermis is really from below that sort of purple where we start to have the pink to where we have the yellow down there. And so the dermis really stops there with that sort of thick pink layer. And we divide up the skin the way we talk about it, with the yellow part being what we call the hypodermis. So as we go through our slides and we're talking about skin, we're going to talk first about the epidermis and the layers that are in that very thin part of the skin. It's just right at the surface. And then we're going to talk about 2 layers in the dermis, and then we're going to just talk about that yellow part, the hypodermis. So here at the very beginning, we're going to be looking at the epidermis, and we're going to start out by talking about the kinds of cells that are present there. And then we're going to talk about layering, but it's all within that upper portion that is labeled epidermis. Okay, so make sure you understand that. I don't want you to be confused. So when we are looking at that thin epidermal layer, it ends up we have 4 different kinds of cells there. So I'm transitioning to slide number 7. So most of the cells that are present there are going to be the cells that make up this stratified squamous epithelium. It's in red on the slide. And when we say, well, what types of cells make up that stratified squamous epithelium, it's the ones that are listed below there, but most of them are that first one, keratinocytes. Then we have a few melanocytes, a few of those Langerhans cells, we've already mentioned them, and the Merkel cells, we mentioned them also. So we're going to talk about the cells themselves now. Now, what is a keratinocyte? And we said, this is most of them. 90% of those cells in that upper epidermis are going to be keratinocytes. And we had said, your skin is an incredible barrier to pathogens. Why? Because the cells are welded together. They're held together by a structure known as a desmosome. And it makes it very hard to go between the cells. Now, within these keratinocytes, you know what they have? Keratin. That's where they get their name. Keratin, it's a protein that builds up in there. It's kind of a waterproofing. So if you ever get water on your skin, yeah, I'm sure you have, but whenever you get water on your skin, it kind of beads up, and that is from the oil that's on the surface of your skin, but it's also the cells themselves contain this waterproofing protein known as keratin. Another weird function of the keratinocytes is that they're literally pushed to the surface, and as they move from the lower levels of the epidermis to the surface, they die. So they're welded together and they contain waterproofing, and something trying to get in there, it has to dig through all these dead cells. So they're shed over time. All right. The next kind of cell, 8% of those cells in your skin are epidermis. Don't let me fool you. We're still talking epidermis. So 8%, so we had 90% keratinocytes. We're now at 98% with the melanocytes. And what did we said? That sounds familiar to something we mentioned a minute ago. Melanin. Yeah. Melanocytes produce skin color, melanin. But you know what's weird about them? It's not the melanocytes that become darkened, it's the keratinocytes. So they secrete this melanin that turns your skin brown, but it's the keratinocytes that are turned brown. So, and why is that? It's because ultraviolet radiation is blocked by melanin. And you have cells at the bottom of your epidermis, not very far down, that are very sensitive to ultraviolet radiation. And you know which one is probably the most sensitive? The melanocytes. And now let's think about that name. You probably have heard, I'm sure if you really think, you'll think, wait a minute, a melanoma. Yikes. Yes, a cancer of melanocytes is a melanoma, and it's a very dangerous skin cancer. So you need to protect them from ultraviolet radiation. So the melanocytes, they're working on it. They're secreting melanin that colors the keratinocytes and helps to protect themselves. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And we have a beautiful picture on the next slide, slide 10. And you can see at the very bottom, you look carefully there, that's the bottom of the epidermis, and it says melanocyte nucleus. And that's what you have to protect. Protect the DNA from that ultraviolet radiation. And you can see the brown stuff, floating away, bubbling away from the melanocyte, and it is coloring the keratinocytes. So it's protecting itself by coloring the other cells. So when we look at this bottom layer, so you find that melanocyte, and you look to the left and you look to the right, and you see those other cells that are right there next to that melanocyte. Those are stem cells, keratinocyte stem cells, that are making more and more of these keratinocytes. All right. The third type of cell that we talk about here, that's that Langerhans cell. And we had said it's this white blood cell that's kind of oozing and crawling around in the epidermis looking for something that doesn't belong. So it's produced all blood cells. It's actually a blood cell. It's a white blood cell that has left the circulatory system and is going to live out its life in the skin, in the epidermis of the skin, looking for pathogens. And what it's going to do is it's going to protect you by eating that pathogen, and it's going to tell its friends, the other components of the immune system, we need to start an immune response, to this. Look at what I found. That's literally what it does. It says, look at, this is the pathogen I found. We need to see if we can deal with it. So that is the third cell that is present there. What is the fourth? It's the Merkel cell. I mentioned them before. I said it's a sensory structure. And so look at the picture. So when you look at the picture, you see a little purpley cell. It's called a Merkel cell. And you look below it, there's a yellow thing. That's a nerve. It communicates directly with a nerve. And I said, if you caress your skin, it's Merkel cells, and something else known as a Meissner's corpuscle. We haven't learned about them yet because, why not? Because we're starting from the outside of the skin, working our way in. And these are the cells of the epidermis. The Meissner's corpuscles are a little bit deeper. They're in the dermis. Okay, before we delve into the dermis, though, we need to look at the layers. There are named layers in this epidermis. That's next.